The first thing we should talk about is just schools being completely broken and the general idea. But I want to start with something topical because I guess it's you who exposed Elizabeth Warren as being a liar.
Yeah, if you
she lied a lot, but
yeah, I mean, the most recent lie was the one that I found out, lying about sending her own son to a private school. And I have no issue with her sending her kids to a private school. The issue then becomes when you lie to a voter's face about it. So if you go to my Twitter, my pinned tweet is a 6-second clip of her lying to a voter when the voter said, "Hey, I just want the same options you had for your kids. And by the way, I heard that you sent your kids to private schools." Elizabeth Warren quickly responded and quietly that, "No, I sent my kids to public schools." So the no was a false denial in regards to the question about private schools. And I was also the one who found, using Ancestry.com, that Elizabeth Warren sent Alex Warren to a private school.
Ancestry.com.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of politicians are being exposed with this website. I think Trudeau, his blackface incident was found on Ancestry.com as well. Just looking through yearbooks.
Let's break down the problem with why it was bad. Warren, lying to your voters, to constituents, is wrong. But what this issue specifically is about school choice. And you have this. You have a website with a map. You have a bunch of states where it's basically entirely Democrats who are advocating against school choice, saying like you can't choose where you go to school.
Yeah, so they're fighting against school choice options such as charter schools or private school voucher programs. Essentially, when I define school choice, I went into a little tangent, earlier, but essentially anything that allows people to choose their schools. That could be another district school. That can be a charter school, a magnet school. It could be a homeschool option. But it just essentially allows the money to follow the child. Just like with food stamps. We don't send food stamps to the grocery stores and then say, you got to go to that grocery store. No, we give the food stamps to the families and say, you can pick a private grocery store here or there. You can go to Trader Joe's, Walmart. So essentially school choice is, again, just allowing money to follow the students. And then it becomes hypocritical when politicians deny that option or opportunity for others, but then at the same time either currently send their own kids to private schools or fancy charter schools, or in the past sent their kids to fancy private schools.
I guess everyone in the comments will probably have an answer for this, but why is it that so let me get this straight. All of the people that you have on your map, all these Democrats, are against people choosing whatever school they want.
Yep. So everybody on this map, so far it's only Democrats. Doesn't mean we won't put Republicans on there, but if there's a Republican out there, any viewers want to send me a Republican's name who sent their kids to private schools and that also is against school choice, we'll add them to the map as well. And we're more than happy to take any of these hypocrites off the map. They just have to stop being hypocrites first.
Right.
It's all throughout the United States.
So here's what I'm hearing. You've got government monopolies on certain public institutions, and you're of the position that people should be able to choose and not be forced. Mm-hmm. Why would a Democrat be against choice? I don't understand. It seems weird.
Well, it doesn't make any sense, especially when you look at these other analogies like food stamps. Democrats tend to be in favor of food stamps. They tend to be in favor of helping the least advantaged financially. So why don't we help them with essentially food stamps for K through 12 education? Democrats tend to be for Pell Grants, which are essentially vouchers or food stamps for higher education. They're for pre-K programs, which pre-K programs, you get the money, you can take it to a private or public provider of pre-K. It's like a voucher for pre-K.
What's their argument? I mean,
I don't know what the disconnect is. They don't make the argument out loud, but I think what it is that if you think about the details, I mean, the teachers unions have a strong interest in keeping the K through 12 public school monopoly as is. So because they have a really sweet deal right now, right? People are residentially assigned to your schools, and they can't leave. Like essentially, imagine if you were residentially assigned to Walmart and you couldn't leave Walmart unless you packed your bags and moved somewhere else. And imagine if you wanted to go to Trader Joe's to get your groceries and Walmart got to keep all your money after you started shopping at Trader Joe's. That wouldn't make any sense. Walmart would love that. And then similarly, the teachers unions love that. They love that monopoly power. I don't blame them. They're protecting their monopoly. They're doing what they do. But I think that's the issue here. And teachers unions overwhelmingly donate to a lot of candidates and Democratic candidates. So that could be part of the issue there. But logically, it's logically inconsistent to support other programs for the least advantaged, such as Pell Grants, pre-K, food stamps, Medicaid. These are all vouchers just for other services. But then at the same time say, well, I'm not going to support a voucher for K through 12 education.
Sounds like a union thing.
They don't really have a strong argument. I haven't heard one.
I know.
They usually pivot to something else, like, they'll just start talking about, well, we don't want public money going to religious schools, to which I'll respond, well, Pell Grants do the same thing. You're calling to expand Pell Grants.
Right.
Warren called to expand Pell Grants, and then she called to end private school choice programs in the United States in her education proposal.
She's supporting both and opposing, like she's supporting both, but then opposing them on specifics.
Yeah, and it looks like there's never like a logically consistent argument made by the other side. It's always just it comes, they'll pivot to something else which is also logically inconsistent.
Yeah, it's politics. But the crazy thing to me is that what you're saying sounds so similar to a lot of what I've talked about in terms of how the left of my youth have like gone away. It used to be, to me growing up, it was the right that was inconsistent, that what was their logic? They were moral authoritarians, religion, all that stuff. Now Trump's rolling out the LGBT flag. I'm not saying he's perfect on that stuff. Mm-hmm. I always mention that. He's not perfect. But now you have the moral authoritarian left. You have illogical political positions. They don't want to go on TV. They don't want to talk. They're the ones outside with the signs screaming, we hate you and stuff like that. It's like this weird flip has happened. I don't want to get too much into the flippening, but it's strange for me to see logically inconsistent, anti-choice.
They'll try to make the argument that, people should just stay in their public schools and fix their public schools. But that's not helping the least advantaged, right? And then Warren didn't do the same thing. She pulled her kid out of the private school, or out of the public school, and sent him to private school.
Well, not just her, a bunch of other people apparently.
Yeah, so a lot of people are doing this. So like practice what you preach, right? If you're going to talk about how other people should just stay in their schools and fix them, and this is a lot of like the Trump rhetoric too, that if you don't like your country, you shouldn't come here. You should stay in your country and fix your failing country.
Right.
Warren doesn't agree with Trump on immigration, but her logic matches his logic on immigration. But
get up and leave.
It's a little different, obviously, because it's different countries, and this is within your country. But it's a similar logic that you should just fix your failing schools, and it's just ridiculous that, well, you didn't do that. Why does everybody else? Why do the disadvantaged people have to do that? Advantaged people already have school choice. They can live by the most expensive public schools, and they can pay for the private schools out of pocket.
Would you be at all shocked if I told you Elizabeth Warren was a liar?
No, not at all.
Because she's lied about a ton of other things.
Yeah,
so it's not surprising.
Her ancestry, and just the latest one is the private school lie. And,
she's got a huge list. The Bernie Sanders thing,
she had no evidence for that. She just kind of said it, but
it worked.
Well, I don't know. Actually, she lost in Massachusetts by a long shot. She got third place, right? And
her own state. Yikes!
And I think that's why she kind of pulled out today, right? She pulled out from.
Yeah, she bailed out. Man, she was awful. And then, of course, what we end up seeing is, because she drops out, everyone's like sexism, misogyny.
Or maybe it's because you're lying all the time.
Yeah, maybe you're a bad person.
And she came after Bernie, and a lot of Bernie supporters actually came and started retweeting my tweet with the lie. So, Warren, if you don't have proof that Bernie said this, if you don't want to give proof, then look, as a third party, if someone just sees well, you lie all the time, and there's no proof either way, it doesn't make you look good, right? So why even bring it up in the first place if you're not going to put the proof forward? And then she came after Bernie at the end of the debate, right? She was like, I heard you call me a liar, and Bernie's just like, I'm not going to talk about it right now. And then
she wouldn't shake his hand.
And then Tom Steyer comes in, hey, I'm just saying hi.
There's a weird thing that's kind of happening that I think kind of explains the logical inconsistency. A lot of these people, I think, that are still attached to, say, like Warren or Bernie to a certain degree, and Biden, they're not paying attention. So without throwing shade at anyone specifically, I can point out that, even when it comes to YouTube, where you have more independent voices, more independent research, a lot of the progressive YouTubers I've seen parrot talking points without doing research. Now, of course, they'll say the same thing about moderate conservative voices too, but for me, whenever I, do commentary, I always start with some kind of factual basis from a certified news outlet. I use a third-party fact-checking thing. I want to make sure that if I have an opinion on something, it's based on the official fact, right? But you have a lot of people right now who will hear tidbits from gossip about what Warren wants to do, about what she is doing, instead of what's actually going on. So what I end up seeing happen conservatives, I feel like here's what happened. When the media has consistently been dominated by leftist or liberal voices forever, like even Jon Stewart, all the political commentary has always been very left. You end up with a bunch of conservatives and even moderates, centrists, who feel like they're not hearing what an alternative or other opinions, so they start seeking out other ideas and other concepts. You end up then finding a group of people who will look into Elizabeth Warren's history. They'll look to her ancestry, perhaps. They'll say, hey, wait a minute, she's lying. I don't support her. Whether or not you're liberal, conservative, moderate, or otherwise, I think the tendency, of what we're seeing, why we have a bunch of hypocrites on the left who support things that seem to not make any sense principally, is because they don't need to. Mm-hmm. It's because they know their constituents aren't going to go on Google and look it up. They're just going to believe whatever they say.
Now you have people at think tanks like me going and looking up, where Alex Warren went to school after I start seeing because she started getting very loud on social media. She started a new hashtag on public school proud. I went to a public school. I taught at public schools. And she remained silent about where she sent her own kids to school. So, you got people like me looking into this. And then I've also been fact checking media outlets as well, like the Washington Post. Just a couple months ago, the dean of the UVA's Curry School of Education, very elite institution, wrote that education spending decreased in real terms since the 1980s, and there's no way you can say that. Eight days after they ran this, they finally corrected it, but it took them forever. It took a lot of back and forth, and it's just like basic facts like that. We should be able to agree on those things, and I shouldn't have to go fact check you, right? It should happen already before the fact.
So what this guy was trying to do is claim that we've cut funding to schools? Is that basically it?
Yep. So his whole thrust of his article was, hey, we haven't tried this before, but hey, we haven't tried to spend more money before. That's the one thing we haven't tried in education. That was the main thrust of the argument. And so the data point that mattered was his talking point that real education dollars have decreased since the 1980s. And there's no way you can say that, whether you're just looking at the federal spending, just looking at the state spending, just looking at the local spending. If you put it all together in total terms, if you do it per student, no matter how you look at it, even in the most conservative scenario, real education spending after adjusting for inflation has increased by 36% since the 1980s, even if you use the highest base year, 1989. So
do you think this guy is a liar or a bad or stupid?
I don't like to assign motives to people, but look, he is the dean of an education school. He should know this. But at the same time, when you don't have a lot of incentives to be very competent, maybe he didn't know. So I like to assume good motives, but given that he should know this seems like it was a lie.
Would he have benefited from his proposals?
I don't know if he would have benefited personally from increasing education. I don't know if he's taking,
Well, like his field, his, institutions. Is there a benefit to his ideology by pushing misinformation?
Yeah, I guess you could make that argument that if he's working in the higher education system, if we start spending more on higher education, then he could indirectly benefit from that. I don't know if that was his actual motive.
Right. I don't want to assign motive. Right. I agree.
But still, it's like, dude, you are like the dean of an education school. Maybe if you were the dean of the business school, maybe you can kind of give him a pass and say like, oh, this is not his field, but this is education. And so like the Philly Inquirer, just like 2 weeks after the Washington Post ran this story, did the same thing and said that education expenditures have increased over the last 3 decades. Right. So repeating the same incorrect statement. But yeah, like the Washington Post took forever. Philly Inquirer was a little quicker on the correction, but they both corrected them. But like the Washington Post should have retracted the piece, honestly, because look, their entire argument was we haven't tried this before. Well, we have tried this before.
It doesn't work.
You corrected it and kept the paper, kept the headline, kept the sub-headline. So, it shouldn't take people like me going out and correcting these things. So I don't know how else to fix it besides, private individuals kind of going out and holding people accountable. And I think this is one of the benefits of social media in general and YouTube and other social media outlets is that you can apply the pressure. Right. It takes a certain amount of following, but if you have the facts on your side and a news outlet is publishing verifiably false statements, then even if you don't have a lot of followers, someone who does have a big following will see this, hopefully, and share it.
One of the things that I think is beginning to happen is there's always been an imbalance between what the media reacts to, right? So with what was the recent thing that the GOP sees? Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer said, oh, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, he you'll never know it's going to hit you. You thought the story, right? So the story wasn't, Chuck Schumer issues veiled threat or warning, gets, called out for it. The story was GOP pounces, GOP seizes. The media is completely imbalanced over if a Democrat does it, if a Republican does it, just say they did it. Instead, the story was the reaction from Republicans instead of the actions of the individual. So what ends up happening with social media, I think we're heading towards a future where it's not going to matter anymore, because you're going to see businesses whose entire base is going to be leftist. And so if, you or I are like, hey, look, Warren's lying, there's no incentive for any of these institutions, politicians or otherwise, to actually correct it, because they're like, our customers are left anyway, so let's just lie.
Right, but we do have an emergence of fact-checking organizations, which kind of helps as well. But then, even then, people will say the fact-checking organization is biased one way or another.
Which they're doing.
So don't listen to them, right?
Well, but Snopes is trash.
Right. Yeah, but there are some good fact-checking organizations, but like you and I know that Snopes, is
what they do?
Leftward biased. But, like the people on the left will say, no, this is good. You're just saying that because you're not leftward biased. So you're right.
Here, I'll tell you the trick they do. I think I've seen Snopes do this several times. Let's say Donald Trump is seen eating a chocolate ice cream cone in the Rose Garden, and everyone on Twitter starts saying, whoa, Donald Trump was eating a chocolate ice cream cone. If it's bad information for the left, Snopes will say, did Donald Trump really eat a chocolate ice cream cone in the Rose Garden? ... with a handkerchief in his pocket? False. And they'll give you this big, long-winded explanation at the bottom. While Donald Trump was eating the ice cream cone, he did not have a handkerchief. Well, nobody said he did. They add little tiny bits to make the whole thing false. And then with NBC, my favorite is when Trump in 2016 said Hillary Clinton acid washed her server. Like it's a figure of speech. They fact-checked it as false.
He didn't actually use acid.
Right. But it literally said that. It said the Hillary Clinton did not use a corrosive substance on her server.
Well, did you see the recent stuff with Snopes fact-checking Babylon Bee?
Of course.
What the heck? And Babylon Bee is a satire site. Come on.
So here's what
happens.
The point. It's like what I was saying before. Why would you find that Warren can actively hold two different positions that make no sense? I am for Pell Grants, but against vouchers, when it's like you're saying it's essentially...
Well, a lot of people will just defend her and say, it's because... whatever, it's because it's for younger kids.
No,
these are younger kids.
They're gonna say you're a bigot.
Well, yeah,
you just don't like Warren because she's a woman.
They'll attack your motives. They'll say, look, you just want, you don't want to help the least advantaged kids in the public schools. It's like, no, the least advantaged are stuck in the worst government-run schools today. We should allow them to pick schools just like the rich do already today. So like they'll respond with things that just don't make any sense. Right. So they'll still back her up. But then for a long time, the argument was, well, Pell Grants are for higher education, and those are adults, and these are kids we're talking about. It's different. Well, okay, then do food stamps. Food stamps are vouchers for kids that are used by the parents. The parents decide how to allocate that money. But then also pre-K. Pre-K is education as well, and it's for even younger kids. So why is it any different between the years of K through 12? It's not.
It's like I think you pointing to the unions might be a factor as to why they're for something that might be they're principally opposed to. But I think all it really comes down to is when you have fact-checking organizations that are overwhelmingly left, news institutions that are in major cities that are overwhelmingly left, and an increasingly young ideologically core of writers, and I'm doing air quotes here, journalists, you're going to end up with fake news. You're going to end up with weasel tactics to promote fake news. And you're going to end up with people who, instead of going online and searching for themselves, just see the man on TV say it and say, okay. And they get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. It depends on their base. A lot of the times I'll call this stuff out on social media and think like, well, why are they even correcting it? Sometimes they won't, right? So like in Orlando, they have the Orlando Sentinel, and they've been saying for a long time that their school choice program is publicly funded. I mean, this is not something to bicker about. It's a really nuanced thing in the debate, but it's a tax credit scholarship program. Their courts have ruled it as privately funded because they're funded through donations. Mm-hmm. And the Supreme Court of the United States in 2011 also ruled that these dollars are private dollars because they haven't entered the tax collector's hands. They're still private donations. Mm-hmm. But it's like little basic facts like this, but their narrative is that public dollars are going to private schools. So they want to keep that narrative, and I call them out week after week every time they keep publishing a new study on this, because it seems like, you used air quotes for journalists. I'll do that as well in certain cases like this, because look, once they've been told what the actual truth is and they've been given evidence and they don't change their narrative and they keep using the same false statements, that's when it moves from journalism to having an agenda.
I was in Ukraine in I think this was end of 2013, when it was like the big protest which sparked the current conflict. It was like, I don't know if you know a lot about it, but basically people rise up, ousted the president, and there was a story from it was a British news organization that was just completely wrong in every way, because they didn't actually come down and cover anything. They just had someone write a script about what they thought was happening based on probably other reports. And so, I had, at the time, not the biggest following, but I had like 70,000 followers maybe. So I tweeted at this person like, hey, I'm here on the ground right now. This is not true. I was literally at this event. And they said, I don't care. The journalist was just told to read the copy and said, I don't care.
It's all about the narrative, right? And the headline.
But that wasn't even it. It was it was laziness. It was like incompetence, not really. They knew how to Google search. They just didn't care. So when they were given the correct information, the response was, hey, man, they just hand me a script and I read it.
So did you blast this out to your followers on social media and
they never corrected
did that help?
No? Never corrected it. Nope.
Did people get upset about it, at least, like any of your followers? Or?
Well, yeah, of course. But it's almost
that's your side already, right? These people were already supporting you. You didn't
it's like screaming into the
really,
wind.
there are some people out there that'll see this and they'll see this and they'll see both of the evidence, and there are some convincible people, right? I'm sure there are people who saw the light and saw the truth, and so I think there's still value in sharing the truth.
It really is mind blowing to me how, like I'll give you another example. The reason things like this persist, and then we can move on to peripheral subjects and stuff. Maybe we can talk about how, what I want to do. I want to talk about how this is like a perfect reason why socialism makes no sense. But there was speaking of Warren, there was a censorship thing that just happened to some progressives, and I called it out. And I was like we've all been saying they're coming for you next because you're the Bernie people. They want Biden. Don't be surprised when the crony establishment comes after you. And I get some guy tweeting at me like, then why won't you speak up in defense of Warren when she calls out Facebook? And I'm like, bro, I do all the time. They're like, well, why don't you call out the censorship of the left? I'm like, bro, I do all the time. These people don't pay attention. They don't read. They don't watch. And then they just end up eating this garbage from fake trash media. And that's why they rally behind people with no principles who send their kids to fancy private schools while advocating no one else should be allowed to do it. They don't care. They just want the keys to the castle.
And I think I saw one of your recent tweets on this. You retweeted someone who was pointing out that someone just quoted Biden or something and they got their account suspended.
That was the guy.
They're just reporting the facts of what someone else said, and they got blocked for tampering with an election or something.
Exactly.
Something completely ridiculous.
You reap what you sow, man. But I'm look, I don't I can chuckle haha, the people who I don't think this guy specifically, I don't want to drag him because he's a journalist. I'm not going to give him air quotes. I think he's a progressive guy, but he's more of an independent voice. So I'll give him credit for pushing back on a lot of the BS, at least sometimes. But too many of these people who are aligned with that side gloated and laughed as big tech started censoring and shutting down, independent voices for whatever reason. So look, I'll chuckle, but I'm still opposed to these big companies doing this. But the thing is, not to get into a big censorship conversation.
So what do you think about alternative, platforms? I know we have a ton of, or just a couple of big platforms. You got Twitter, Facebook. But what do you think about alternatives to these platforms and people kind of switching over platforms because of these issues? Yeah,
that's why competition is so important. And again, proves why socialism is a really, really bad idea. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show every Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., sometimes an hour or two. And we do have a full live recorded version of the show that includes a lot of comments and smaller segments you probably don't see. If you want to check that out, you can watch live at 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, or become a member of this channel. And for $5 a month, you get full access to all of the recorded podcasts. Every day after the show, we make them available in the community section of this YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe and stick around for more segments and more shows Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all in the next show.